My daughter-in-law pushed her plate aside and announced to the whole family that my cooking looked like school cafeteria leftovers. I just took a calm sip of water and said evenly, "Interesting, because your own parents cooked tonight." Right then, the entire house went so quiet, you could hear the wall clock ticking. "This looks like mystery meat from a high school cafeteria tray," my daughter-in-law Chloe sneered, pushing her plate away. "This food is an absolute disaster." A heavy silence fell over our dining room table in Boston. My son Julian stared down at his fork in embarrassment, completely at a loss for words. Chloe leaned back triumphantly, utterly convinced she had successfully humiliated me in front of the entire family. I took a slow sip of water, feeling my heartbeat remain perfectly steady, and set the glass down gently. I looked her right in the eye, not with anger, but with absolute clarity. "I didn't cook tonight," I said quietly, "but someone you know very well did." Chloe's arrogant smirk froze instantly. At that exact moment, the kitchen door swung open and her own parents, Maeve and Arthur, stepped out looking incredibly crestfallen. They had spent the whole weekend visiting me and wanted to surprise their daughter with traditional comfort food recipes from her hometown. Maeve's eyes were welling up with tears, while Arthur just shook his head in sheer disappointment. The color drained from Chloe's face as it dawned on her that she had just completely trashed her own parents' hard work. She stammered out a half-hearted apology, but the damage was already done. As a 67-year-old widow, I've learned to watch people closely. I owned this house, a beautiful place my late husband and I built together, brick by brick. Ever since Julian and Chloe moved into the upstairs apartment 6 months ago, supposedly to save up some money, the atmosphere had taken a subtle, toxic turn. Chloe started taking over the garden without asking, criticized my daily routines, and increasingly treated me like an annoying tenant who was only good for cleaning up after them. But I am not a weak woman. I didn't cry, and I didn't argue. I took action. Later that evening, after our guests had left, in a painful silence, I sat alone at the kitchen table. Maeve had squeezed my hand through her tears before leaving, whispering, "I am so incredibly sorry for how we raised her. We are going to handle this." I just nodded. It was time to redraw the boundaries in my own home before things got completely out of hand. I pulled out my financial ledger. The next morning, the kitchen was unusually quiet. Chloe avoided my eyes as she poured her coffee. Julian sat at the breakfast bar, staring blankly at his phone, trapped in his usual passivity. I set a fresh pot of tea on the table and slid a small blue folder right next to Julian's breakfast plate. It wasn't a legal document, just a simple, transparent breakdown of the house's monthly utility and maintenance costs, meticulously split by square footage and usage. "Since you've been living upstairs for 6 months now, we're going to start splitting the bills fairly starting next month," I said, my voice calm and steady. Chloe froze mid-motion and slowly turned around. "We thought we were helping you out around the house instead of paying a fixed rent," she said, a sharp edge to her voice. "I don't need help vacuuming," I replied evenly. "I need reliability. The automatic transfer needs to hit my account by the 5th of every month." Julian cleared his throat nervously. "Come on, Mom, we're family. Do we really have to be this bureaucratic about it?" I looked at my son, the boy I had raised with so much love, who seemed to have completely lost his backbone. "Precisely because we are family, Julian. Good fences make good neighbors, and clear rules keep families together. If this doesn't work for you, we'll need to look into other living arrangements." The word "other" hung heavily in the air. It wasn't a threat. It was a plain, undeniable fact. Chloe bit her lip. She was used to manipulating people with cold shoulders and silent treatments, but with me, that tactic hit an invisible brick wall. She grabbed her purse, snatched Julian by the arm, and stormed out of the house without saying goodbye. As the front door slammed shut, I didn't feel sad. I felt a profound sense of relief. I walked into the hallway and took the spare key to the upstairs apartment off the key rack. They needed their privacy, and I needed my boundaries. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Maeve, Chloe's mother. Her voice sounded fragile and heavy with shame. "Harriet, I just can't get it out of my head," she began. "The way Chloe acted the other night, that is not how we raised her. She's become so materialistic and cutthroat since she got that new corporate management job." I listened patiently as I pruned the roses in the front yard. "Maeve, you don't need to apologize for your grown daughter," I said softly but firmly. "She is responsible for her own words." Maeve sighed deeply on the other end of the line. "Arthur and I had a long talk with her yesterday. We told her that her behavior was absolutely unacceptable, but she just completely shut down. She's throwing a fit because you're asking them for bill money now." I paused with my gardening shears and glanced up at the upstairs window. "It's about more than just the money, Maeve. It's about respect in my own home," I explained. "When someone walks into my house and tramples over my hospitality, there are consequences." Maeve agreed with me wholeheartedly. She told me that she and Arthur had decided to completely cut off the extra financial help they had been secretly sending Chloe to cover her luxury car loan. "She needs to learn the value of hard work and humility," Maeve added. Our call ended on a note of mutual respect. Chloe had thought she could use her parents as a shield to isolate me, but she had severely underestimated their moral integrity. As I put my phone away, I saw Julian pulling his car into the driveway. He got out alone, looking completely exhausted. The lines were drawn, but I was fully prepared to defend my space. Saturday mornings usually meant a big family grocery run, where I almost always ended up footing the entire bill. But this weekend, I changed the script. I got up early, enjoyed my coffee in total peace, and left the house alone by 7. When I returned 2 hours later, the downstairs refrigerator was stocked strictly with my own groceries, neatly labeled and organized. I ran into Chloe in the hallway and she looked like she was having a miserable morning. "Where are the bagels and the cold cuts?" she asked as she walked past, refusing to look at me. "In my fridge," I replied casually, hanging up my jacket. "Starting today, each floor fends for itself. You have a fully equipped kitchenette upstairs. There's really no reason for us to be mixing up our meals or our grocery bills anymore." She stopped dead in her tracks. "This is ridiculous, Harriet. We live in the same house," she snapped, visibly rattled by my sudden, uncompromising boundaries. "Exactly, Chloe. We share a roof, but we are no longer sharing my life at my expense." I countered, locking eyes with a calm gaze that completely shut her down. Julian trudged down the stairs, his hair a messy nest. "What's going on?" he asked sleepily. "Your mother is literally dividing up the food now," Chloe complained bitterly. Julian looked at me questioningly, but he could see the absolute resolve in my eyes. He clearly remembered the dinner disaster and the harsh words from his own in-laws. He didn't say a word. He just lowered his head, walked into the kitchen, and started looking for an old coffee maker we kept in the basement. Chloe let out a frustrated huff and stomped back upstairs. The first step towards spatial and emotional independence was complete. At Quiet Revenge, we believe stories matter because people matter. Many of the stories we share touch on family betrayal, resilience, loss, and the quiet strength that helps people keep moving forward. While AI tools may assist with certain parts of the creative process, every story is carefully selected, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team with care and respect. Because our channel currently isn't fully supported through YouTube monetization, your support helps us continue creating meaningful stories for this community. If quiet revenge has ever kept you company, touched your heart, or reminded you that strength can be quiet, please consider supporting us with the price of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/quietRevengeFamily co-fi https://co-fi.com/thestoryfamily PayPal https://www.paypal.com/paypalme/kanhuangmin. Thank you for being here with us. Over the next few days, I maintained my strategy of quiet presence. I changed the locks on the interior door that separated my main floor from the upstairs apartment. It wasn't an act of aggression. It was just the logical consequence of our new living arrangement. When Chloe tried to breeze through the door into my living room on Tuesday afternoon to use my laundry room as usual, the handle wouldn't budge. She knocked aggressively on the wood. I opened the door just a crack. The washer and dryer in the basement are available for you guys every Saturday from 8 to noon, I said, politely but distantly. During the week, I need the laundry room for my own things. Chloe's eyes narrowed to slits. You're just power tripping because I criticized your cooking, she hissed. No, Chloe, I replied calmly. I am simply protecting my privacy from someone who has shown zero respect for my property. Your parents clearly never taught you to ask for permission before walking into someone else's personal space. At the mention of her parents, she visibly flinched. The sting was deep because she knew they were entirely on my side. Julian, who was standing a few steps behind her on the staircase, stared at the floor in utter embarrassment. It's her house, Chloe, he muttered under his breath, barely audible. It was the very first time he had shown even a shred of resistance against his wife. Chloe spun around and stormed up the stairs, slamming their apartment door so hard the walls vibrated. I closed the connecting door and turned the deadbolt twice. It was a beautiful, solid sound. The following Sunday, Maeve and Arthur arranged a get-together, but not at my place. They chose a neutral spot, a quiet little cafe on the outskirts of town. They had invited Julian and Chloe, and they asked me to come along too. Chloe showed up with a smug, arrogant look on her face, clearly expecting her parents to defend her against my unfair treatment. But the afternoon went down a completely different path than she had envisioned. Once the coffee was served, Arthur took the floor. His voice was deep and carried the weight of a stern father. Chloe, we asked you here to talk about your behavior. That dinner at Harriet's house was the absolute pinnacle of disrespect, and we are not going to tolerate it anymore. Chloe immediately went on the defensive. Oh, please, Dad. She's just making a mountain out of a molehill. She's controlling the whole house and locking us out. Enough! Maeve cut her daughter off with a sharpness that genuinely startled Chloe. Harriet has every right to run her home exactly the way she wants to. You took her generosity for granted and insulted her right in front of us. We've decided that we are completely cutting off any financial assistance for your lifestyle expenses. If you can't learn to respect your elders, and especially your mother-in-law, you can stop expecting any help from us. Chloe stared at her mother, completely dumbfounded. She looked to Julian for support, but my son was staring intently at his coffee cup. He was finally starting to realize just how isolated his wife's behavior had made them. I just sat there taking it all in, sipping my tea. I didn't have to say a single word. The truth and the natural consequences of her own actions were doing all the heavy lifting for me. Her pride was broken. The loss of her parents' financial safety net hit hard and fast. Chloe could no longer effortlessly fund her expensive lifestyle, and having to actually contribute to the household bills put a noticeable dent in her budget. The upstairs apartment became remarkably quiet. No more loud music, no more passive-aggressive stomping on the floorboards. The reality of being an adult had finally caught up with my daughter-in-law. One evening, there was a soft knock at my front door. It wasn't Chloe. It was Julian. He looked pale, holding an envelope in his hand. "Here's the utility money, Mom," he said quietly as I stepped aside to let him into the hallway. "Right on time for the 5th. I took the envelope and gave him a warm nod. "Thank you, Julian. I appreciate it." He lingered by the door, looking wistfully into my cozy, peaceful living room. "It's really tense upstairs right now," he admitted, rubbing his face tiredly. "Chloe does nothing but complain about money. Her parents are refusing to even take her calls until she gives you a real, genuine apology." I looked at my son, seeing the sheer exhaustion in his eyes. "Julian, you're a grown man. You have to decide what kind of life and what kind of values you want to stand behind," I said gently. "I know, Mom. I've been weak," he confessed. "I just turned a blind eye because I wanted to avoid a fight." "Looking away doesn't solve problems, Julian. It just gives them room to grow," I replied. He gave a sad nod, hugged me goodbye, a hug that felt real for the first time in months, and headed back upstairs. I could feel that the turning point was close. The dynamic had shifted permanently. The final breaking point arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was setting the dining table for myself when I heard a car horn outside. Arthur and Maeve had driven over to retrieve a few expensive items Chloe had borrowed without asking and never returned. They walked straight upstairs. Within minutes, loud voices came filtering down through the ceiling. It wasn't hysterical screaming, but rather the sound of a family drawing a definitive line in the sand. Chloe was clearly trying to shift the blame onto me again, but Arthur's voice remained unyielding, cutting right through the floorboards. "Stop blaming everyone else. You've behaved like a tyrant, and now you're dealing with the consequences." Moments later, heavy footsteps came thudding down the stairs. The front door flew open, and Chloe stormed out into the pouring rain, followed closely by a visibly shaken Julian. Her parents walked down a moment later, meeting me in the entryway. Their eyes were sad, but completely resolute. "We gave her an ultimatum, Harriet," Arthur said firmly. "Either she completely changes her attitude from the ground up, or we are cutting contact entirely. Julian knows exactly where we stand too. I thank them both for their strength and integrity. As parents, they had done the hardest right thing, even if it cut deep." Once their car pulled away, a profound, almost tangible peace settled over the house. It was the kind of quiet that only comes after a massive clearing thunderstorm. I sat down at my table and ate my dinner. It was a simple meal, but it tasted entirely like peace. Late that evening, after the rain had finally cleared, I found Chloe sitting alone on my front porch steps. Her clothes were damp, and all traces of her usual arrogant posture were entirely gone. She was staring blankly at her hands, looking exactly like a child in an old storybook who had suddenly realized they had gone way too far. Julian was sitting out in the car, in the driveway, giving her the space she desperately needed. I opened the door and stood in the frame. She didn't look up, but her voice trembled when she spoke. My mom is right. I've been so obsessed with controlling everything and looking successful that I completely forgot how to be a decent human being. I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the cool night air. She didn't need me to comfort her. She needed to feel the weight of her own realization. The food that my parents made. I only lashed out because I was jealous of how at peace you always seem. She continued, a tear finally escaping and running down her cheek. And instead, I hurt the people who love me the most. And I hurt you too. I took a step forward. You didn't hurt me, Chloe. You just showed me exactly who you were at that moment. And I responded accordingly. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen, but clearer than I had ever seen them. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at her for a long moment. Forgiveness is a process, Chloe. It doesn't start with an apology. It starts with changed behavior. Go back upstairs to your husband. He's waiting for you. And call your parents. They gave you the greatest gift anyone could give you today, the truth. 3 months later, life in the house had completely transformed. The upstairs apartment was now officially leased to Julian and Chloe, complete with a standard formal rental agreement that both parties had signed with a sense of pride. Chloe had scaled back her crazy corporate hours and was investing time into sorting out her own inner life, instead of trying to dictate everyone else's. She seemed lighter, more approachable, and genuinely grounded. That Sunday, we all cooked dinner together. Maeve and Arthur were back at the house as well. This time, we were all gathered around the big table in my dining room. Chloe was helping her mother plate the main course, and as she set a dish down in front of me, she gave me a shy but entirely genuine smile. I really hope you like it, Harriet, she said softly. I took a bite, nodded, and returned her smile. It tastes wonderful, Chloe. It tastes like hard work and a fresh start. Julian sat right beside her, holding her hand, finally, looking like the man he was always meant to be, confident, grounded, and truly happy. My house hadn't grown any bigger, but it felt infinitely more spacious. The firm boundaries I had established, they hadn't locked anyone out. They had protected what mattered. They had created a foundation where real respect and honest love could finally take root and grow. As the evening wound down and everyone said their warm goodbyes, I stood by the window for a moment, looking out into the quiet garden. Life was moving forward, steady and serene. I had defended my home not with screaming matches or legal battles, but with the quiet power of my own ownership, personal boundaries, and unwavering consistency. And that was the most satisfying feeling in the world. At Quiet Revenge, we believe stories matter because people matter. Many of the stories we share touch on family, betrayal, resilience, loss, and the quiet strength that helps people keep moving forward. While AI tools may assist with certain parts of the creative process, every story is carefully selected, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team with care and respect. Because our channel currently isn't fully supported through YouTube monetization, your support helps us continue creating meaningful stories for this community. If Quiet Revenge has ever kept you company, touched your heart, or reminded you that strength can be quiet, please consider supporting us with the price of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family Co-FE, https://ko-fi.com/The Story Family, PayPal, https www.paypal.com/paypal me/Kan Huangmin. Thank you for being here with us.